Yeah, like I said, we can't get into all of these today. This series will continue. October 17th is the next one of these, and those you're going to go into next, but you hit on two of them today, two of the important ones. The other thing that you'll be offered between now and our October session is the ability to just sit down with Brian or anyone on our team and start an assessment on your company to see how you score in the 8 drivers as compared to your industry peers. You'll actually see where your peers score in these and where you score and then what those gaps look like, which is why I will kind of segue perfectly over to Mike because, and I'm sorry, I was going to be sitting with you guys, but we lost our remote. Our speaker took our remote, so I got to run slides here. But this segues perfect to Mike because Mike's focus is, and his passion is in the operational efficiency and taking strategy like this, working it into strategy. So I'd like to hear how you can start that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, and my goal is to kind of bring it down to the ground and give you just a snapshot, just a really brief flyover of how you can maximize the 8 drivers. And the way that you can maximize 8 drivers evaluation is by getting the things that I talked about earlier. And through my experience, what we got was alignment on vision, get real traction in your business and get healthy as a business. If you can do that, you can maximize all of those drivers in different ways. If you can get your entire team to do that, you can get those multiples on multiples or do whatever you want with your business. So I've talked about a lot of this, but basically just a couple of key points. All businesses basically face the same issues. When Gino Wickman wrote the book Traction and launched EOS, what he really discovered is there's not any new business ideas. So what's in EOS, these are not new and novel concepts. These are ideas that have been around for 100 years or more, and they're going to be around for a couple, thousands more years. As long as there's businesses in the marketplace, these concepts of being healthy are going to be the same concepts. What he did is he pulled them together into an operating system that an entrepreneurial company can implement and get real traction with. And there they are. I mean, this is a real simple form of what EOS is. So if you've heard of EOS, maybe read the book, I can make it really simple, and it is beautifully simple. It comes down to being healthy and strong in 6 foundational areas. There's 136 unique issues that all businesses face. That's another thing he discovered. Is when they did this, when he studied the businesses that get breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough, 1 in 20 businesses experience that. What do they have in common? They're healthy in all 6 areas. And you can read about these areas in a variety of different business books, and every year books are written. They come back to one of the 6 foundational principles. And the first one, if you flip the slide, is vision. Vision is all about getting everyone in your company 100% aligned on the vision. First, defining what is your vision. Matthew talked about that a lot today. At your core, what's the vision of the company? What are you after? What's the purpose? What gets you up every day? We define that through 8 questions. Go back to the slide. And it's called a vision traction organizer. It's a way of defining and getting everyone aligned on what is the vision, what are your core values, what's your core focus, what's your go-to-market strategy, what's your 10-year plan, your 3-year, your 1-year, the objectives for the next 90 days, and what are the issues that you have. Getting that understood and shared by everyone, getting on the same page, and getting everyone in the company aligned on that. If you get healthy in the vision component, the next component you got to tackle, the next slide, is people. Getting the right people in the right seats. Right people are people that share your core values. So, yeah, I work with clients now, and they'll say, well, we have our core values because they're on our website. And I'll say, what are they? And they're like, oh, hold on a second, let me look up my website. Right? They don't remember. So what I do is I say, well, every business has core values. Some clients I work with say, we don't have core values. You do. We just have to discover what are they. And then we have to test them. Are they really your core values? Do you walk these values every day? Because if you don't, it's going to be seen as hypocrisy by your staff. So right people are people that share those core values, becoming radically committed to hiring, firing, rewarding, and recognizing based on core values. We want people that share our beliefs and our values and what we exist for as a business. That's right people. Right seats are people that are in the right roles, in the right jobs. They get the role, they have the ability to do it, they want it, they get up every day excited about doing it, and they have the capacity and the time to do the role as defined. And we build all that out through an accountability chart. So when we do this with clients, the first step is forget the structure you have today. We're going to start with a blank piece of paper and decide what is the right structure for your business to be successful. And it's interesting, the same experience I had with my company. We organically grew into a structure, but it was not necessarily the right structure to take us to the next level. So we had to redefine that without thinking about who has what role or what job title or what position. What's the right structure? And then decide who are the right people for each of those seats to meet the roles of each seat in that structure. That's building on an accountability chart, getting the right people in the right seats, core value alignment, get it, want it, capacity to do it with the right accountability chart. Data is about being accountable, having a scorecard that as a leadership team, you can look at every week and it'll give you a pulse on your business and the ability to predict. It importantly tells you where you need to dive in. Where are we off track? Real numbers, not 50 numbers, 5 to 15 numbers that tell you how are we doing. And defining that and refining that until it gives you that real pulse and that ability to predict. And then ultimately, getting that filtered throughout the entire company so that everybody in the company has a number or numbers that they're measured on. And that's not micromanagement. Good people want to know, what does it take to be successful in my job? And they want it to be more than just the occasional pat on the back. Hey, you're doing a great job. That's what I used to do before we had real accountability and real numbers. And I didn't do it often enough. They want to know, how do we measure it? How do we know? So we get that filtered through the whole company. Once you're strong in vision and aligned on vision, and the company has the right people in the right seats, and the right structure, and you have the right measurables for accountability, your issues will become abundantly clear. And it's fun for me to work with a business. We get these three components healthy, and we see the issues just appear. So we get really good, if you hit the next slide, at doing a couple things. One is documenting our issues, just being radically transparent, being open, being honest, listing and documenting our issues, and prioritizing and compartmentalizing issues, because not all issues can be tackled at once. We make the mistake as entrepreneurial businesses of trying to do way too much at the same time. So we get really good at EOS saying, what are the top issues that we have to tackle this quarter? Those are the short-term issues that we're going to address. And then intentionally procrastinating on longer-term issues. We're going to get to them. Nothing gets ignored. Gone are the days of, yeah, that's been an issue. We've never gotten that right. We capture it. We're going to get to it. Every quarter we come up for air and we decide what are the priorities this quarter, and we solve those forever. And that's the next component, IDS. Getting really good as a company. A leadership team first, and as goes the leadership team, so goes the rest of the company, at identifying what's the real issue. It's interesting when you do that, and you get good at really identifying, the issue as stated is usually a symptom of a bigger issue. And then what's the real root of that issue? And then what would solve it forever? And there's a tool we use called IDS, Identify, Discuss, and Solve, where teams get really good at that. It's solving issues forever, at the root. Once you get strong on the issues component, the next slide is about building solid processes. I used to write these process documents that were 50-page documents that were, I thought, beautifully written and eloquent, and I even sometimes would put like a border around it and make it look really good. And I'd email it out, and I expected the whole company would follow it. In reality, nobody read it. And parts of it didn't even make sense, wouldn't work, because I didn't really consult with anybody. I thought, this is the way we should do it. That's not what I'm talking about. What we do is we write processes that are radically simple. The 20% of the things that get you 80% of the results in a linear fashion. Step 1, sub-bullet, step 2. And then we train everyone on it. Anybody that touches any part of the process has to understand the entire process. And they have to get feedback. And the process changes too, because you're flying the plane while you're building it. So sometimes you gotta modify it, you gotta tweak it. And you do that. You get everyone following it, and you measure that. Those become measurables too. And how often do we meet that process? So you get started with the process component, you bring it all down to the ground. Gino says that vision without traction is just hallucination. And I love that quote because Traction is about having clear objectives for the business in a 90-day world that you're going to tackle. And they're not, again, the 15 objectives, it's the 3 to 7 big things that you as a company, as a leadership team are going to get done in the next 90 days. And everything else is a long-term issue. But what are the 3 to 7 things that are going to move the needle, that are going to get us closer to our 1-year plan and help us meet that 1-year plan, closer to our 3-year picture and our 10-year target? And let's get those solved. And then every quarter we come up for air and we set new objectives for the next quarter, and having a regular meeting pulse through a tool called the L10 meeting. So if you're familiar with the EOS, you've ever heard of the L10 meeting? That's radically simple but really effective. It's about where are we on track, where are we off track, what are the issues we have, and how do we IDS and solve those issues as a leadership team. I used to have a lot of leadership team meetings pre-EOS where we would meet for a couple hours, and we talked about all kinds of issues and we got a lot of input. But when I look back, I don't know that we very often solved anything. Like, we talked about stuff a lot, but I don't know that we really got to the root and solved stuff. The L10 meeting is about solving issues. And my teams that I work with will often say, when they start their EOS journey, and it is a journey, it took us a couple of years to get this rhythm and get healthy. Radically simple, but it's not easy to implement, it takes time. But in the beginning, my teams will say, we only solved 3 issues in our L10 meeting. And they've got 20 issues on their issues list. And my answer is always the same. I would rather you solve 1 issue forever than 10 issues for never. Because that's what I used to do. We used to think we solved 10 issues. We didn't really solve them. We just talked about them and created some to-dos, and the to-dos were never done on time. And this is different. This is about solving them forever and having that regular cadence and that accountability as a leadership team. That's really simple what the EOS system is. So my goal today was just to give you a snapshot, because if you think it's a fit, and it may not be a fit for your business, there's other ways to do this. But if you think that's a fit for you, I'd be happy to go into much more depth. I usually do this in about an hour and a half with leadership teams, explain it in more depth, explain all the tools, explain how it would look in your unique business. I'd be happy to do that. Or if you want, email me and I'll send you a copy of Traction. You can read it yourself. EOS, all the stuff that we talk about in EOS is available to the world. You can go download it yourself. Like, you don't need to go through me. There's no key, password, or anything. You can go get it. But if you email me, I'll send you a book and information on how to get it. I think on the next slide, I've got a couple of, there's my email. The Traction Library, if you go to eosworldwide.com or just go through my microsite, you can get access to all the tools, all the information, downloadable videos. Or if you would like, I'll do a 90-minute meeting just to explain in your business what it would look like, to see if it's a fit. And the other part of a 90-minute meeting is to see if I'm the right fit. There's a lot of EOS coaches now. When I started EOS, there was like 40. There's like 800 of us now. But part of the decision, if you think EOS might be right for you, is EOS. The first decision is EOS the right thing for your business. The second decision is who's the right coach, because that's a really important decision to make, and they're not the same decision. So that's what a 90-minute meeting is set to do.
And Mike, I have a question for you. When you think about when you and your business partner Leo came to that place that the vision for the company was changing to more of a vision for selling it, did you or were you able to take some of that vision or how did your EOS change with that?
Yeah, what needed to happen, Leo, when we sold the business, my business partner Leo retired, so he stepped down, and I stayed with the business, as I said earlier, through the sales and convergence. That was one of the big red flags, Ruben, initially when we sold into the multinational, is nobody could define the vision of the bigger company. And so for me, that was the first like aha moment, like, oh, right, what's the vision, right? And so ultimately what we had to do is we rolled out EOS at the larger company, and we started with vision. That was the first step, and went through all the elements.
Yeah, and how can business owners take their vision and their intent in getting the company exit ready? Because that's a little different than traditional, like we want to grow, or we want to add people, or we want to be the biggest in our space, and we want to use EOS to help get us there operationally. How could they take this and what you do when they start they're planning for an exit. They want to optimize valuation and plan for exit.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think there's two parts to that answer. I think it depends on what exit might look like for them in defining that. So as owners of an entrepreneurial business, defining by exit, do we mean that we're hoping that the acquisition very swoops in and just buys us, or are we strategically and intentionally courting an acquisition, or are we thinking about an ESOP, or are we thinking about selling to our employees and being open? And the second part of it is being transparent and open with what your plans are. Your employees your staff will guess if they're not given the information, and without information, that kind of guessing is dangerous to a culture. So you need to be as transparent as you can, and if you don't know, you can say, I don't know. We're exploring some options, but being transparent and open about it. And that can be built into your vision. We want to achieve market dominance in Lansing, Michigan, or in the state of Michigan because we want to be acquired by a larger multinational. That can be your vision, and that's motivational to good people.
Right. Yeah, and at our company, I know, and Nick leads this part of our strategy. Our growth strategy includes an acquisition strategy. It is one of ours that we pay attention to quarterly, and we refresh it. But part of our growth strategy is acquiring financial firms or advisors that are retiring and they've got clients, because we don't want to see that die. We also have the capability of taking over that. So we work that right into strategy.
Okay, we knew and we had communicated early on that part of our vision was we wanted to have market dominance in mid-Michigan, which we achieved, but we also knew that was about as far as we could take it. So we had conveyed part of the vision being that we want to be acquired by somebody that can take it to the next level, because we didn't want to see it die.
I remember we originally started working with you and Leo, the vision, it changed in the time we were working with you. Just in that year, it started with, we want to sell internally to our people. I think there was maybe 4 key people you had identified that you intended to sell the company to, and that changed when you started to realize we were onto something quite a bit bigger. You guys were quite a success story here in Lansing. We don't see a lot of large multinational PEs coming in and buying companies here.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, the two parts of it were just understanding how that works, and that's where your team helped enormously in understanding the drivers and then getting really healthy through the EOS system.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions for Mike or Brian about the 8 drivers or the 6 keys that Mike shared? Any questions there? Any practical questions, Nick?
I just had some add-ons.
Yeah. Do you want a mic? Yeah.
Can you pull the 8-driver slide back up?
And lunch should be here shortly. Does somebody have the time? I'm the timekeeper. I don't have time.
11:56.
Lunch should be here any minute.
So if you think of these 8 drivers, everything that Mike went through on the operational efficiency, they're all designed to maximize the capacity of the 8 drivers. Brian recapped the monopoly control, Stephanie Breedlove's story of how she focused on her particular niche and sold her company for 6 times revenue for $54 million. She didn't get $54 million just because she had monopoly control. She maximized these other 8 drivers. Monopoly control was a good example of Stephanie's business, but it wasn't solely. If you really think through it, one of the things that she was able to do is she was also able to score really high in the growth potential. Because when you think of a business and you want to move, you've reached your end game. The Olympics are starting in a few weeks. The best analogy, and anytime we talk with groups of entrepreneurs, we ask them, what's the best sports analogy for a business owner? It's resoundingly a marathon. You run a marathon. You built this business. You've been battered, you've been bruised, your ankles are swelling, and you're ready to be done. Well, your acquire's just getting started. And as a business owner, you need to think about that. It's not the end of your journey that you're selling. It's the beginning of the next person's journey that's buying. And from a growth potential perspective, Stephanie was able to harness that because she found a buyer that was super excited about what she had built. And they made a decision that if they poured gasoline on this business, how fast could it accelerate? And so they had, how many subscribers, Care.com? Brian?
7 million.
7 million subscribers compared to 10,000 clients that Stephanie had. So strategically, they had made the decision that they are going to accelerate this business. So from an operational perspective, where does that come into play? Go back to Main Street and just think of Blue Owl Coffee just down the street and the muffins that are in the back. And if they sold 100 muffins per day, what would it be like if magically they woke up tomorrow and the demand was for 500 muffins? Do they have the capacity to support that? What would that do to their business model? I can tell you Blue Owl wouldn't be able to support 500 muffins tomorrow if it happened. As you're building your business, you want to make sure that as you're going through the operational efficiency components, you want to make sure that you have the capacity that for your buyer, they are excited about your business. Because if they're willing to buy your business and they're willing to run that marathon, nobody's willing to run a marathon unless they're really excited at the beginning, because marathons suck. So really think through that, and that's where looking at not your end game, but your acquirer's end game will help you drive value in your business. Thank you.
So just on that last slide I was on, those of you that stuck it out here and waited either to hear all this good information or just because you're excited about the launch coming. And actually, can I get someone in here to do a check on the front door for lunch? Thank you, Victoria. I want to get back to that slide. We do have this QR up here. We would appreciate some feedback about today, about the speaker this morning. Mike and Brian, thank you so much and we'll take question Q&A while we're waiting for lunch. Also, we want to offer you between now and October 17th, business owners, entrepreneurs, you get a free consultation with us, and we're starting these valuation assessments. You can actually start to look at your value as it compares to your industry peers, look at the 8 drivers, we break them down with you and look at your company. And Mike, I think it's similar to that 90-minute where you look at the 6 keys of operational performance that you're offering. So those are offers we're making for anyone that's planning to come back in October. We have another speaker, Trent Clark, that will be coming, and then we'll be tying further into the 8 drivers and to the 6 keys with Mike. Hopefully, when you're done with that October session, if you take us up on the consultation in between, you'll have a sense of your valuation, you'll have a sense of your score in the 8 drivers, and how to start implementing those in your business. That's what we get excited about. We get excited about watching people track and grow their valuation just like they track stocks and track their retirement plan. And we think that more business owners need to be aware of that, doing it that way. So, any other questions, conversation for these 2 gentlemen? David.
A friend who probably does maybe 200, 300,000 a year in revenue. We got, I don't know, 3 to 5 team members. What do you think EOS could do for them in like a year or a couple of year period?
Yeah, it's a really good question that I run into a lot. So the question is, at that size, is the EOS system a fit for him or not? And, my answer is it depends on his business, not so much the size of his business. It depends on his people and his business, and if they're ready to kind of embrace the change, embrace the things that need to be done to be operationally healthy. I've seen it, and I've worked with clients that are 4 or 5 people. Even though that's not the target market for EOS, that's not traditionally. Usually EOS companies are somewhere between 25 and 150 companies. I've also seen it work at the other end of the spectrum with a 270-person company, and I have a couple companies that have a couple thousand where they're running it successfully. So, and then, for-profit and non-profit. It's really for entrepreneurs. It's an entrepreneur operating system. I have a couple clients that are pure nonprofits. One's a church. And it works very successfully there too, because it's really about the 6 foundational principles. And if you're really willing to dive in and embrace those, and to do the work that it takes to be healthy in all 6 areas, it doesn't matter whether you're 5 people or 500 people, whether you're for-profit or non-profit, it works. Because again, these aren't unique to EOS, these are about business health. These are unique, these are the areas that make any business strong.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 questions. So what are the indicators that you have a business that actually can, you can determine the value of? And the other one is, what's an easy way to track your valuation over time?
So, 2-part question. First, how do we understand what the value of your business is to start, correct?
More of like, is it even worth looking at? Like, what are the indicators that you've got something worth looking at from a valuation perspective?
I would say if you have a business that you find it worth working in, it's definitely valuable to see what it might be worth, because if you're spending all this time and effort and energy into it, as Ruben alluded to, it makes sense to track that value similarly like you would a 401k or an IRA that you have. So what are the tools and how would we do that? It would start with a benchmark. Where are you at today? So what we would do is we would take your industry, we would tie it specifically, call it NAICS code, NAICS. So we would take your specific industry to understand what your peers are doing and what their valuations are. That would give us what we call rules of thumb. Think of it similar to like comps in real estate. What is your neighbor's house who just sold? What was their house worth? And how do you apply that as a rule of thumb to maybe what yours is? So rules of thumb would be one component. Then we're going to look at the financials, and generate seller's discretionary earnings or adjusted EBITDA. Getting into the jargon here certainly, but basically look at what the financials of your business reflect. Combine that with rules of thumb in your industry, and then take a whole bunch of data of recent transactions to benchmark where you're at based on your financials and then your scores in those 8 drivers. So we sort of create a bell curve of the other businesses in your industry. And the ones that are scoring in the middle of the bell curve, that's your average score. Tie that to your value, you get an average multiple associated with it. That's how we sort of spit out really what is a range of value. Best guess is it's somewhere between here and there. And then how do you track that over time? We would retake the questionnaire, and between now and then we're going to identify priorities for you. How do we improve on these drivers and highlighting what are the most high impact drivers for you? So a high impact driver would be based on primarily 3 things. So it would be your priorities, our recommendations, and then financial impact of making change there. So you start with a benchmark to get a range of value where you're at today, because we think that's really important to understand what you've got. And then we would help you work through the process of how do we get from where you're at today to driving you to being best in class in your industry. So does that answer your question?
Thank you.
I'm kind of curious how some of these concepts and processes relate to more of a professional services business where you've got, say, a dentist, a surgeon, where a lot of the revenue and everything is driven from their day-to-day work. Do we see that these types of systems and valuations are equally useful in those types of businesses as they are to some of the other types of businesses we've talked about?
Yeah, what we found is that they are definitely ubiquitous to all businesses, all lines of industry there. The way you approach it can be a little bit different. To use your example, if you're a dentist office, you can't sell it to an accountant. Stephanie Breedlove's not going to buy your business because she's not a trained dentist. So typically you're looking for somebody in that line of work. But you could also approach that in a different way and say, okay, I am a dentist who is tired of looking in people's mouths all day long. So you could establish a management team or employ other dentists below you who would then run the day-to-day operation. Now we're talking about hub and spoke, which is one of the 8 drivers. And hub and spoke is focusing on how dependent on a business is it on its owner. So how owner dependent is the business? And if the business is dependent on you, the owner, whoever the buyer is knows that for you to exit, they're going to have to replace you. That can really shrink the size of the available market. So one way to approach that is if you become less owner dependent, somebody who maybe is not a dentist or a lawyer could potentially own your business, and instead they would be hiring your team, your management, and buying that, which would have real value because then they wouldn't have to spend all of their day-to-day time in your business. So it opens up the world of potential buyers for you, making these drivers pretty ubiquitous across all industries.
And I would say I know what you're getting at there because I've worked with a lot of doctors and dentists, and they are notoriously the ones who don't realize they've built something of value. They got in it, they went to medical school, dental school, and they're just thinking revenue, income, save as much as I can for my retirement, and then kind of let that practice just get dissolved to the other dental practices in the area, right?
Either that or they sell and it's generally a pretty basic formula. There's not a lot of what I see of utilizing these types of processes, or and I have started to talk to some of those owners about kind of what you're talking about is, hey, how do we create a situation where I'm no longer working chair side, right? The business isn't being successful based on whether or not I'm there day to day. We always have to have a professional there, but kind of like you alluded to, and that's why I'm just kind of curious how to better help those people look at their business in a way that it's not just something they're going to save money from and then just sell it for your standard, generalized number that we all, hear about in those types of businesses.
I think ultimately if they can take these 8 drivers and they work it into the point that, and they have to think different, you have to help them think different. They've got to be thinking, how can I set this up so like any investor can come buy this business and it's profitable?
Right.
Not another dentist has to buy. If they can get there, then they've got something of real value, but very few of them get there, right?
Right, yeah. So it's interesting. Thank you for the kind of elaboration there and the idea.
Yeah.
Lunch is here, and I bet people are getting hungry. This is, we're wrapping up here. Any more questions, Q&A, we can keep going. I'll leave these 2 gentlemen up here. You guys are gonna get lunch last, just in case anybody has questions. But go ahead and start grabbing lunch, and from here, anybody that needs to leave, we understand. But please, we would appreciate some feedback. Just snap the QR up there, give us some feedback. Let us know how we can help you. And anybody that you'd like some more information from that was here today, including our speaker, Matthew Pollard. I'll have him this afternoon, so if I need to get anything from him, let me know. All right, well, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you too. Grab some lunch and enjoy some conversation, and we'll